There's a lot of conversations happening around what's happening from a societal, cultural perspective, all the way down into conversations around the dinner table. And I'm making an observation here is that people are expressing grief in some form, talking about the issues as they're presenting themselves. And one of the things that are taking place, and I've heard this through a lot of conversations I've been having with some of my colleagues, is that persons are entering into attempting to help each other, which is great. And they're moving into something called mentoring. And what they're doing is they're saying, I'm doing what I can to help those that I'm having these conversations with. And I said, well, that's great. And then I sort of turn my head to the side a little bit and go, however, do you understand what mentoring is about? And then that's when it opens up conversations that helps them understand this educating approach called mentoring. And as I help them understand this, one of the other aspects that comes to the foreground is while they're coming from a great good heart wanting to help, there is a line you've got to be alert to from a mentoring point of view that you don't move into counseling. Because if you do, crossing that line can get into difficulty for you, for the person you're having the conversations with. And it's not a line that you want to cross without truly understanding what counseling is and saying, what certification do I need if I'm going to do that? Which is a career choice, if you wish, but you don't want to, in your day to day interactions, cross into that counseling without the appropriate certifications. I bring it forward is because with mentoring, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Now, I understand mentoring is about sharing a conversation that's holistic, reciprocal. The person that you're having that conversation with is often asking you, if you're the mentor, questions. They're looking at points of view, they're looking at their own perception, their perspective, and being able to have this conversation that's collaborative so that they can figure some things out, which is great. They're great conversations to have. But one of the things, as I've already mentioned, is that there is a line there in the sand and you don't want to cross it. And so, what I've done is I've created a presentation here that has 5 of those lines. And I want to go through them with you so that you might understand them so you don't get yourself into difficulty. Now, I am not a counselor. I am not of legal referencing. I'm doing this because of my many years of doing mentoring. And there is another YouTube channel that you can look at called Mentor Practices, one that I do with my business associate. And he writes about mental health and grieving and brings a great perspective on that channel. There's some really wonderful videos if you want to do a bit of catch up. So I just want to acknowledge that these come from my own experience, and I'm always very aware of that line. So why don't we get into it and see where this takes us? The first one is yes, the mentor, that be you listening to your friend or family, you're listening empathetically. You're saying, okay, I'm attempting to understand what your feelings are here. And therefore, you're listening to the mentee's experience and what they've got to share. And that might link to some of the challenges that you've gone through over some time. And that's great. And so there's some trauma that might be associated or in mental health. But where the line begins to take a look at is as a mentor, don't go into talking about the trauma, the anxiety, the depression, any of the elements that would make up this raising of awareness that something's not quite right for the mentee. And you've got to really pay attention to that because you're not, in a sense, competent to be able to deal with those issues as they arise. So just best bet is just listen to the conversation, bring things to the foreground, just look at it empathetically, and you can then suggest that they seek further help, whatever that might be, because of that conversation. But again, it's not from a place of prescription. It's from a place of saying, I think it might be helpful to go get some assistance. So let's look at the next one. The next one involves diagnosing behavior or personality. So you're going to observe and comment on the patterns that you're picking up in terms of, how the person's communicating, or are they leading, are they managing, how are they dealing with their own growth, and help them recognize their strengths, and certainly bring to the attention some of the blind spots. But when you start going in, diving into it, interpreting the deep-seated behaviors that are behind it, and assigning labels, start calling it something, then that's when you are going to get into difficulty, because you don't want to then land that idea in someone's head, heart, and hands, and then they take that and that's how they look at the world, is through that. That's again not from your perspective as a mentor. What you're doing is you're moving into therapy at that point in time, and that is where the line is crossed. Do not go into it from that perspective. But you can have a conversation about, and bring to the foreground ways for them to sort of see how they are behaving and what actions they're taking, and how does it sort of help them or hinder them. But don't dive into it and try and label it and figure out what's going on. The next one to take a look at is managing crisis or trauma response. And you can offer stability and a listening ear when something happens and the crisis has arisen, or there's trauma and something is taking place, and they're going through some kind of a rough transition. Now, it could be job loss, it could be something happened within their family, or something happened to themselves. Well, what you've got to be alert to is not crossing the line to feel as though you're presenting what might be called a frontline support. That's where phone calls to lines of support, or getting mental health, or going to the hospital, because you've got to stay removed and not into the situation itself. Once you move into it and the person starts to see you as that frontline support, then there is a sense of responsibility shift, and that's not yours to take on, right? What you are is you're there with that empathetic ear. You're attempting to just offer the stability, but don't go into it trying to find out what's happening and trying to fix it. That is not what you want to do as a mentor. All right, the next one is exploring childhood experiences. And the mentee is bringing up things that have happened in the past. And it's what happened in the past is sort of shaping who they are and what they're doing in today's living their life. And even though you may have experienced some of them, and therefore you can relate to some of it, again, the crossing of the line is attempting to go in and see if you can help fix it, because you think you fixed yourself, or you went through some kind of format to help you. And then you are going to bring those activities into your mentoring with the person. That's the line. Don't go there, right? Because you're not going to go into the therapy. Again, don't go into it in such a way as that you appear that you're doing some frontline support of what it is that's happening. Again, the listening and being there and have a conversation, that's great, and take it from there. The fifth one I bring is the shifting from goal setting to healing. Now, it's not your place to do the healing. That's where the counseling takes place. That's where they can help out. Now, if you're helping someone, oh, what actions you're going to take, and help them be accountable and support them in, some of their career leadership, legacy development, whatever it might be, and you're there sort of walking with them, but you're not diving into it and having those intense emotional conversations about it, so that you'd say, okay, well, if you did this and helped me this, then maybe I could do that. And they're trying to take you in deeper and deeper. You've got to pull yourself back out and say, no, there's a line there. I can't cross it. There are others who are better suited to be of assistance to you. And what you're doing is you are then alerting them that there is a line. It's not something that you will cross with them, but you can help them find some of that, and then they can make their decision of who they want to engage with. Now, in all of these five examples, it's really there's this listening and being present and just being there empathetically. But as soon as you move into attempting to correct behaviors or understand deeper reasons and offering suggestions of how to counter it, that's when you cross the line. And therefore, you've got to stay alert to that. There's lots of really beautiful, wonderful things you can do through the mentoring lens. But when you cross that line, that's when you can get yourself into difficulty. So again, Mentor Practices on YouTube is another channel you can drop into. I'm going to put a link to my business associate's latest book, Grief, a Silent Pandemic. That seems to be something that is happening now a little bit more around, certainly me. I'm seeing it, feeling it myself. And he may be of assistance. The book could lead you back to some of his work. But also, I would encourage you, if you have questions or anything, there is the comments section. Remember, it's public. If you want to go to the website, wealthmovement.com, links in the description, and the contact page, that's where you can ask a private question. Again, I'm very aware of where the line is, but I would certainly help you out wherever I can, but I will declare if we're getting close to that line. What you're seeing now popping up, having gone through the presentation, are videos that I would encourage you to go to next. And you will find that what they'll do is they'll up your insights into living this legacy life. In particular, the playlist prompt, because I shoot these shorts anywhere from 50 seconds to a couple of minutes. And again, they're almost like daily prompts. And you can use those with your journal to shape and share your legacy stories, to live your story, to be in your legacy story living. Best wishes with it, and take care.